Hey, what's up? I'm Dr. LeGrand, and today we're going to talk about how to use nootropics to your ADHD advantage. Now, there's going to be 5 areas that I'm going to be really addressing, and then, of course, towards the end, I'll answer you guys' questions. But let's dive right into it. And the very first thing when it comes to using nootropics for your ADHD is what you can do. I mean, you could definitely, there's a lot of things that you can do, but one thing you can do that's free is really learn from your symptoms. So when I talk about symptoms, one of the biggest indicators that can help us with our symptoms with ADHD is really has to do with like energy, our focus, even stress and anxiety, and really kind of base that off of how is our energy and our focus throughout the day. That is one symptom that can help us identify which nootropics to specifically be using. And then later on, I'll talk about the next step about when to be using them. So I gave 4 different scenarios here. And this is a graph of cortisol. If you're not familiar with cortisol, cortisol has to do with something our adrenals release, and it has to do with our energy, but it also has a big impact also on our focus. And so scenario 1 is if you are the type of person, okay, so looking at scenario 1 right here, A, if you're that type of person that has very low energy very first thing in the morning, right, and it's just sluggish throughout the day, but then for some weird reason, at nighttime, right here, you have this burst of energy. You're like, okay, that's weird. So this is something that's really important to understand when you're using like nootropics such as like ashwagandha, L-tyrosine, L-theanine, even things like adrenal support. So when I'm looking at this, if you could kind of just, even if you have no idea, what you need to do is measure throughout the day, maybe do it for a week. Just kind of have a journal of like, okay, what is my energy throughout the day? Is it tend to be really low in the morning and really high at night, or is it all over the place? But scenario 1 is, okay, if you find that your energy is really low, you should not be doing something like ashwagandha. ASHW is just going to be short for ashwagandha. The reason why you shouldn't use something like ashwagandha if you tend to have lower energy in the morning and you're not stressed really in the morning is because ashwagandha lowers cortisol. So that would actually defeat the purpose. Something you should be doing here is doing something like adrenal support. Now you might be like, well, ashwagandha is supposed to be adrenal support. So something like adrenal desiccated. Okay, adrenal desiccated is, a variety of different types of supplements. It just has that desiccation that can help improve the cortisol levels. It increases the cortisol levels. Even something like L-theanine can help with this as well. Sorry about the writing. But something like L-theanine can also help improve this if you have lower levels. What's great about L-theanine can help with high and low. Now, also, if you are focused, so let's say your focus is just really bad in the morning, so same case scenario here, then you'd use something like, maybe L-tyrosine, D-L-phenylalanine, something very first thing in the morning. Now, looking at the other scenario here, scenario B, right? So right here, scenario B, is where your energy is really high and you're really stressed, but at nighttime it's plummeted. So in this situation, what I would recommend is, you could take something like ashwagandha first thing in the morning because maybe your cortisol levels are too high and you're feeling stressed and you need to bring that down. But maybe midday you have that crash midday, you would do some kind of adrenal support or taking something like L-tyrosine. L-theanine could also be helpful. And in scenario A, I forgot to mention in scenario A, at nighttime, maybe you do take the ashwagandha at nighttime if you tend to be more high energy, more stressed at night. Okay, so that's for scenario B and scenario A. Now for scenario C, change the color here, right? It's just low across the board. So the black line, I didn't mention this before, the black line represents of where your cortisol and your energy and your focus levels should be at. Okay, that's just normal of what it should be. But scenario C, it is low the entire way. Low in the morning, low midday, and also at night. So this is something where you wouldn't take something like ashwagandha at all because that would just lower your cortisol levels, but you should be doing something like adrenal support. Should be doing something like L-theanine. You should be doing something maybe possibly like L-tyrosine, D-L-phenylalanine, a lot of different amino acids that maybe need to build this up because you're just across the board just low. Just have low energy, low focus throughout the entire day, and that's where you're running into problems. Now, scenario D, on the other hand, right? Scenario D is where you're just up and down, right? So you can see it's very high in the morning, low midday, but then high at night. So you're kind of all over the board. And this is where you would focus, okay, well, adrenal support probably midday. And then in the morning and at night, maybe doing something like ashwagandha, okay? And maybe midday is where you focus on maybe implementing a lot of the different amino acids midday. All right. So hopefully is this making sense for you guys? Put it in the chat if this makes sense to you as far as when it comes to when you should be considering certain different types of supplements. So if you feel high energy, and very stressed, and you're feeling that in the morning or at night, that's when you should probably be taking ashwagandha because it lowers cortisol. But if you are feeling low, that's when you should be doing adrenal support and doing other types of nootropics, such as L-theanine, L-tyrosine, D-L-phenylalanine. Okay, so put that in the chat if that all makes sense. But moving on to secret number 2 to making nootropics work for your ADHD, to take advantage of it, is the ideal time of when to be taking it. Okay, so I get this question asked a lot, is like, when should I be taking supplements? And this kind of goes back to the graphic cortisol, but I wanted to kind of break this down a little bit better for you guys as far as 3 different areas: focus, energy, and stress. So let's talk about each one of those situations. So focus, for example, kind of go back into the previous graph that I just talked about. If your focus is low throughout the day, but really high at night, this is where I would say take it first thing in the morning and take it midday. I would say in most case scenarios, not saying everybody, but most case scenarios, you want to take it very first thing in the morning and midday. Now, a lot of times with my patients, I will tell them to take it morning and night because a lot of people will forget to take it midday. And I'd rather you take it than not take it. But ideally, and that's when I take my supplements, is very first thing in the morning, because guess what? I tend to have very low energy in the morning. I'm not a morning person. My focus is like hazy, and I take it, so I get that boost. And then when it comes to that mid-afternoon crash, like 1, 2 o'clock, that's when I want that second boost of energy, right? I don't need it at night. At nighttime, I'm winding down and I'm checking out, okay? But if, for example, your energy is high in the morning, high in the morning, but low midday, and then up at night, this is where I would probably, depending on what you're taking, right? So ashwagandha, you would want to do it morning and night if you're in that situation where your energy and stress, so even stress also is high and low and then up at night. You would also want to take something ashwagandha morning and night. Now, as far as when it comes to if your energy is, on the other hand, is low in the morning, high midday, so then you would focus on ashwagandha midday. But then in the morning, you would want to do some adrenal support. At night, I usually don't recommend taking any kind of adrenal support at night because I can keep you at night. But you can certainly take your L-tyrosine, D-L-phenylalanine, L-theanine, those things, your other types of nootropics to be taking at night, and that's fine. The reason I don't have people take adrenal desiccated or that kind of stuff at night is because it can keep you at night, because it is a little bit, it does stimulate the adrenals and it's going to increase the cortisol. You don't want that to be happening because you want to be going to sleep. So that is as far as when it comes to timing. So hopefully that makes sense. So for the most ideal, it's usually morning and midday for most people, because for most people with ADHD, they tend to need that boost to the very first thing in the morning. They need that boost midday. At nighttime, they're winding down. They don't necessarily need that. Okay. But does this all make sense as far as the timing? Let me know if this makes sense or clear. So moving on to step number 2.2. So 2.2, if you really want to optimize your brain, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then hit that subscribe button right now. Talk everything about ADHD. We do these live streams so that you can optimize your ADHD brain. So that is just step number 2.2. I had to put that little plug in there. But moving on to step number 3, some of you guys have heard me talk about this, is the importance of doing lab testing. Now, why is lab testing important? So the first things I talked about is you could go based off of symptoms, but you might not know where your energy levels are or your stress levels are at, your focus is at. You're like, well, Dr. LeGrand, it's all over the place. Well, this is where you want to be doing testing. You want to see, okay, where is your cortisol? So for example, doing something like cortisol, which we measure with saliva, doing a cortisol reading where you do 4 readings. You do it in the first thing in the morning, right before lunch, right before dinner, right before you go to bed. So that way you can kind of see where your cortisol levels are at. And that way you can address the hormones, but also kind of understand where your focus and your energy is throughout the day, so you know when to supplement and what to supplement. Okay. The other thing is also doing a lot of blood work. So we get a lot of blood work, testing a lot of different, vitamin D, also the B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, a lot of different types of vitamins that we can test, but also hormones. So thyroid, that's also important to be testing. And as far as the urine goes, you could be testing a lot of different amino acids. So you could test for L-tyrosine, you could test for D-L-phenylalanine, you could test for 5-HTP, test for also even L-tryptophan. So testing a lot of different type of amino acids, you could also get tested for. Now, a lot of you guys are like, a lot of my doctors don't. Usually at least amino acids or some amino acids you can at least get tested. Certainly a lot of different vitamins to see if you're deficient in those areas. The reason why it's important to run these tests is so that you know what's low, right? So you know exactly what to be taking as far as nootropics. The nootropics that you need to be taking that's why this is critical. So that way you know what to implement. Now, when it comes to step number 4 is being consistent. So you guys are probably really good at being consistent with the medication because you feel that instant, reaction to the medication. It works really effectively right away. And you notice when you forget a day when you don't take it. Now, when it comes to nootropics, at least the natural nootropics, right, it's more subtle. So you could tend to forget a lot, but you need to be consistent in order for this to work. Every day, be, consistent with it, just like you are consistent with your medications if you are taking medications, but that is really critical of being consistent. And then step number 5 is retest. So when you've done some of these tests, you implement the nootropics, you're starting to take them. Now you got to see, okay, is it working? Is it changing and improving those numbers? Because if it's not, then maybe you're not on the right type of nootropic or you need to change the dosages. That's what I do with my patients and clients, and that's what you really need to be implementing. So the really thing that's important about here is if you don't understand, like, okay, what labs should I be running? What types of supplements should I be implementing? What types of food should I be implementing? We'll have a free guide in the description below that you can download if you have not downloaded that already. Hope you guys found this beneficial. Until next time, this is Dr. Grand signing out. Thanks. Bye.